Hey, what's going on? It's Inventor here, with my Poison Spiritborn in Diablo 4 Season 8. I just cleared Pit 55 to unlock Torment 4, so I wanted to share my build with you in case anyone was struggling to reach the endgame with the Spiritborn. The way my build works is that I use the boss power Ashava's Poison Breath along with the key passive Noxious Resonance to deal hundreds of millions of damage even with subpar equipment and glyphs. In this build overview, I'm going to cover my character, abilities, progression, and other relevant information. So first, I'll talk about my gear. Gear. The first thing I'm going to discuss here are affixes and tempers, so I don't have to reiterate this for every item slot. Critical strike damage is the most important offensive affix and temper since it's a multiplier for Noxious Resonance. For defense, reaching the resistance cap of 70% is important, and so is pumping up armor for physical damage reduction and to boost damage for the unyielding hits aspect. Utility wise, vortex size up to 100% helps a lot too. Starting with my weapon, I have a 1 GA Ancestral Quarterstaff with Aspect of Redirected Force. This aspect is a huge source of critical strike damage for the key passive Noxious Resonance. With that said, your weapon should be a Quarterstaff since it gives 45% block chance, and that in turn gives you more critical strike damage. In order of importance for your affixes, you want an 800 item power quarterstaff with crit strike damage, max life, and dexterity in that order. I had one here with dexterity, max life, and damage over time, but I wasn't quite able to get one with crit strike damage before reaching Torment 4. My weapon temper on this was Gorilla Potency for the Spirit Hull to boost how much barrier I receive. As you can see here, every time I cast a Gorilla skill, that would be for all of my skills, I deal damage equal to my thorns, but I also get a barrier equal to max life, and that is what this particular temper helps out with. For my offensive temper, I used the Worldly Finesse recipe for critical strike damage. So, in terms of recipes, there is Worldly Finesse. This is available from the beginning of the season as a magic recipe, and then you'll eventually get it as a legendary recipe. So that helps you boost your damage on all of your offensive tempers. Now, my helm here is Harmony of Ebawaka, which has some good affixes, including generic damage reduction, but its unique effect also grants a nice multiplicative damage modifier too on your skills. You can get this as a drop from Beast in the Ice, and you can get boss mats from running incursions or reputation rewards. You can find your reputation rewards from the reputation board over in Tarsarak. My chest armor is Might Aspect for more DR. Prior to this, I used Disobedience Aspect to pump up my armor stat to get more damage from unyielding hits, but I decided I need more survivability, so I went with damage reduction instead. Affixes were Dexterity, Max Life, and Resistance to all elements, while tempers were Total Armor and Vortex Size. My gloves are Vehement Brawlers with Dex, Crit Strike Damage, and Res as the modifiers. And of course, I have Crit Strike Damage. And Withering Fist Size is my utility temper for this one, but that's just because I didn't really have any better options. So, since I already have Vortex Size up to 100% on my chest armor and pants. So that's what I have on my gloves. And the aspect that I have here, Vehement Brawlers, gives me more damage whenever I use my ultimate. So for my pants, I have GA Dex with Juggernaut's aspect, along with max life, armor, total armor, and vortex size. So lots of armor here. My boots, I'm running reactive armor aspect for block chance to pump up the redirected force aspect that I was talking about earlier. Then I have as the affixes dexterity, armor, and cold resistance. For my tempers, I actually wanted movement speed, but I couldn't quite roll it. I ended up rolling evade cooldown reduction instead. That's all right. And then for the utility temper, I got Withering Fist size, similar to what I mentioned before. Vortex size is most important, but Withering Fist size is, I guess, second to that because it, well, helps the radius of my Withering Fist. So that's for my boots. So next is my amulet. Here I have unyielding hits for more weapon damage. The modifiers here are max life, total armor, ranks of apex passive, total armor again, and crit strike damage. I would have preferred dexterity or crit strike damage over the max life roll, but it is what it is. On my first ring, I am running Edge Masters with cooldown reduction on the Hunter, resistance, and a ton of crit strike damage. So Edge Masters aspect, pretty simply put, my skills deal more damage based on how much primary resource I have when cast, and since we're not really draining out the primary resource that we have, that in this case is Vigor, I'm pretty much permanently getting a 21% damage boost on all my skills. And then for my second ring, I'm running Conceited Aspect, also with cooldown reduction on the Hunter, resistance, and crit strike damage. The thing I should note about this aspect and Edge Masters, I think that here for Edge Masters, it says skills deal up to 21% increased damage. In hindsight, I think that maybe Inner Calm or some other offensive aspect might have been better because this only really works on skills and neither the boss power Shava's Poison Breath nor the key passive Noxious Resonance count as skills, at least from my understanding. So perhaps it would have been better to replace Edge Masters for something like Inner Calm or one of the other aspects. But again, this is what I was running. I may have made a slight error here, but all the same, it did get the job done. Now, going over the sockets here, starting with the jewelry that I have, my goal is to reach the 70% resistance cap and at least 1,000 armor. So you can see here, I'm already sitting at well over 1,000 armor. I'm actually at almost 2,300, but my resistances could use a substantial amount of work. That's where these gems come in. I'm running some amethysts because if I didn't have the amethyst, my shadow resistance would be almost zero. My weapon has emeralds. It has to be emeralds for critical strike damage. And then I used emeralds for my helm too to get some dexterity. Last but not least, I did run 1 or 2 tributes of harmony. Yeah, tributes of harmony here to pick up some runes. And in doing so, I made knock what in my chest armor so that when I CC enough enemies using, say, Withering Fist or Scourge's Slow, I triggered Decrepify to reduce incoming damage. Similarly, I have Q on my pants, so when I get CC'd or injured, Earthen Bulwark will trigger to grant me barrier and help keep me alive. There are plenty of other options like Thull Rune for freeze and vulnerable, for example, but these runes are what I had available. As for elixirs and incense, now normally I would say some combination of life, stats, armor, and resistances would be the way to go. That still applies here, but if you're really greedy for damage and your survivability is fine, then you could run more armor to boost unyielding hits aspect using the Song of the Mountain incense here. So just wanted to go back to talking about the resistances. As you can see here, if I activate these, I go from having, I think I had like 5,000 life, or, well, yeah, a little under 5,000 life, to now, if I throw everything in here, I'm up now to 7,000 life with the elixirs and incense, and my resistances, which were well under 70%, are actually much closer to 70%. My lightning resistance was pretty far off from 70%, but Again, that's totally okay. I'm trying to do as best as I can to get close to the cap with the level of equipment I had. Of course, I could have upgraded my equipment some more to reach that cap, but as well, you can tell it wasn't quite necessary. Or that pretty much covers it for my equipment. Boss powers. For my main boss power, I run Ashava's Poison Breath. Ashava's does a huge amount of poison damage, and this power is the only feasible option for my build since I directly abuse this boss power along with the key passive Noxious Resonance. To put it into perspective just how much damage Ashava's does, my skill Scourge here does a little more than 10,000 on-screen damage over 6 seconds, but meanwhile, my Ashava's does 800,000 over 4 seconds, at least going off of the numbers here. The way this boss power works is that when hitting a monster affected by some damage over time, Ashavas will release a fart cloud at them. Once monsters get hit by Ashavas, I land a critical strike to activate my key passive Noxious Resonance, which immediately detonates all that damage with a massive multiplier. As for my modifier boss powers, I have Cinnaret's Flames for more damage to all elements. This includes poison. Hatred's Embrace's Haste for CSC. That's crit strike chance because that directly allows me to activate Noxious Resonance. And Endariel's Flaming Skull for more damage over time. This is to boost the poison damage, and consequently, when it gets detonated, we'll have a lot more damage. There are a few other options though, so if for some reason you had over 50% crit strike chance already without the haste power, you could instead use Lilith's power, for example, to help deal with bosses, or Harbinger of Hatred's power to apply vulnerable and get more damage. Attack speed is not a priority here whatsoever because Ashavas can only activate every 2 seconds or so anyway. Skills. Now, I'm not going to go over all of the passive nodes on my skill tree. I will talk about the actives a little later. But the one passive that I would want to talk about on this skill tree would be the key passive Noxious Resonance. Again, this combined with Ashava's makes the entire build. As I explained earlier, if a monster is poisoned, like with Ashava's, then hitting them with a critical strike pops the poison damage all at once, with 30% of your crit strike damage as a multiplier. On your skill bar, you would have Vortex, Counterattack, Toxic Skin, the Hunter, Withering Fist, and Scourge. So to get the most out of this build, so first you have to use Vortex to group monsters up, poison them with something like Toxic Skin, and then once Ashavas goes off, hit them with a crit from Withering Fist to trigger Noxious Resonance. You can tell that Noxious Resonance is working with Ashava's Poison Breath because here you see the poison, they're only taking like ticks of like 200,000 at a time, and then when Noxious Resonance goes off, you see suddenly there's a big damage number of like 25 million. So that's the gist of how the build works. You also have other supporting skills, like Counterattack, for example. This is nice because it can passively boost your crit strike damage on top of free dodge chance, whereas activating Scourge gives some CC and bonus damage to CC'd enemies. The Hunter, which is our ultimate, executes enemies, resets itself, and doubles damage against injured bosses for 8 seconds. Plus, it gives bonus damage from Vehement Brawler's aspect too. I use Toxic Skin to help spread poison to multiple targets and to gain Unhindered, but I could also have switched this out for Soar to get more mobility and apply Vulnerable too. So that pretty much covers it for the skills. Paragon. When I cleared Pit 55 to unlock Torment 4, I only used 144 Paragon points. That's roughly Paragon level 115 with the Renown rewards. I could have used more points to make my life easier since I'm already well over Paragon level 200, but I wanted to see how much, or rather how little, I could clear Torment 4 with. But for most players, I would suggest having all 5 boards and at least 3 glyphs before attempting Pit 55. Looking at my boards, I ran just 4 boards. These were the starting board with Headhunter glyph, Sapping board with Spirit glyph, Revealing board, and Bitter Medicine board. If I went further, I would have also had Viscous Shield board for extra damage. If I can just pull that up here. Yeah, I would have had this board for extra damage from having Barrier. And since I can pick up crit strike damage here too. In terms of glyphs, I used only 2 glyphs at this point, these being Spirit at rank 46 for its legendary bonus, and Headhunter at rank 16 for a slight radius increase. But I was in the process of leveling the Fitness glyph for more crit strike damage, and I would have used the glyphs Bane and Canny for more damage multipliers too. Mercenaries. For my hired mercenary, I use Rahir. Rahir is the obvious pick for me because this build's weakness isn't really a lack of damage, it's a lack of survivability. Rahir can give free armor outright to boost unyielding hits aspect, but I prefer using him to help round out my resistances. You might recall earlier that I was struggling to reach the cap, and that's despite the fact that I have Rahir here giving me 15% resistance to all elements. He also does give some other fun little bonuses. He can slow enemies, he can grant unstoppable, and give bonus damage as well. So that's for Rahir. As for the reinforcement, I run Aldecan with Field of Languish whenever I get CC'd to help keep me alive. So that covers it for my mercenaries. Progression. From level 1 to 60, keep in mind that this build runs on Ashava's boss power, so you need to clear as many world bosses as you can to defeat Ashava first. During my 1 to 60, I used Quill Volley for leveling, but if you're insistent on running poison from start to finish, you could probably use other poisoning skills like Stinger or Touch of Death until you acquire Ashava's. For my leveling process, from level 1 to 30, I started off with Helltides on normal to farm cinders and then open chests on penitent. From 30 to 50, I spent most of my time spamming incursions on hard mode so I could clear them quickly with other players. And then I spammed strongholds on normal from 50 to 59 until finally turning in my renown rewards to reach level 60. Stronghold clears should give some legendaries and tempering manuals. Using items that have the highest item power among them with mostly correct tempers and aspects should get you through Pit 10 to unlock Torment 1. From Torment 1 to 4, of course, your number one priority is still to get Ashava's Poison Breath. If you still don't have that power, then keep running world bosses. In the meantime, spam incursions on Torment 1 or 2 to gather Spectral Ash, so that when you do get Ashava's, you can immediately pump its damage to the moon. Running incursions on Torment should also give you XP and some Ancestrals. When you pick up Ashava's power and get it to max rank, you'll probably be able to move into Torment 2, maybe even Torment 3. From there, you can rank up your modifier powers to at least rank 11, and pick up whichever powers you may not have, like Andariel's. After that, you can grab Obdicite via the Reputation board, Infernal Hordes, or Tributes to masterwork all of your equipment to at least rank 4. Level the Spirit and Finesse glyphs whenever you run the pit, and with enough damage multipliers, you should be able to switch to Torment 4. Okay, so that's pretty much all I've got for you today. The build can be a little clunky and a little squishy, but it's a lot of fun and has awesome potential damage, especially when you have a large group of enemies. I hope this helps, and if you made it this far, then a like, comment, or subscribe is always appreciated. But otherwise, that's all from me. Thanks everyone for watching, Inventor out.